Everyone, it's Laura Vegas. A while back, actually probably well over a year ago, I shared a little tutorial of sorts on my blog about how I photograph my layouts, how I set them up, where I take the photos, and some things like that. And today I thought I would share a little bit about how I edit those photos and how I get them to where I want them to be before adding them to my blog or online galleries or for submitting. So I'm going to show you, this is a layout that I shared last week on my blog, and you can see here that I took quite a few photos of this one project. I have probably close to 20 photos here of just the full layout itself, and then I have multiple shots of several detail shots. And the reason I do this is if I take several shots, or a whole bunch of shots at once I should say, I'm usually guaranteed that at least one of those is going to work. I do take these really quickly, so the 20 shots you see here of my layout, I probably snap those off in around a minute. So I do take them very quickly, which means that there's always going to be some that come out blurry. You know, there's going to be some that are crooked, they're not totally straight, or I just haven't centered them right or anything like that. So if I take a lot of shots at once, I have a lot more choices, and I'm bound to find one that's going to work, and then I don't have to, if I were to pull all these up on my computer and none of them were good, if I only took 5 shots of my layout and all 5 were bad, I'd have to go back, redo it all, and I'd rather not do that. So I just take a lot to begin with. So once I pull them up on the computer, I will just go in and I will just very quickly just go through them and look for the best ones. So, you know, like you can see here, this one's not completely straight. It's not straight on. I can tell just because this side of my layout is farther back. So I'm really just going to look for the one where everything is in focus, everything is pretty clear, it's a pretty straight on shot. And I just think it's one that'll be good to work with. So I just really go through, this is the one here that I'm going to use to edit. It was the best one of the bunch, so that's the one I'm going to use. But I will just go through those and pick 1 or 2 that I think are the best and pull them up in Photoshop and then pick my final one. Same with the detail shots. I will go through these really quickly and just pick the one that I think looks the best. So it's a really quick process. I don't spend a lot of time on it. So once I've done that, I will pull up the ones I want to use in Photoshop, and I will either delete the rest of them or I will edit my other shots and make sure that they're going to work, and then I'll come back and delete the rest. I don't hang on to them. So I'm going to show you here, I'm going to pull these up in Photoshop, and what I'm using for this is Photoshop CS2. And I have a couple versions of Elements, and honestly I've never got them to work on my laptop. So I figure CS2 is about as close as I can get to what most of you are probably seeing on your computer, or if you're using Elements. Usually when I do my editing I use CS5. So in here I pull up my photo, and my goal in editing this photo is going to be to make it look as true to real life as I can. I want the colors to look the same as they do on the papers and you know, on my actual layout. I don't want to show something off here and, you know, someone else goes and they find the product and they think, oh, that's not, you know, as bright as I'd like, or something like that. Or I don't want you to order the product thinking it looks one way and then get it and have it look completely different. So my goal is really to get it to look just like it does in real life. So the first thing I'm going to do is lighten this up a little bit. It is a little on the darker side, and that's totally fine. As long as I follow, you know, if I take good photos with natural light, no flash, you know, if I start out with a decent photo here, just a few quick steps will make it look really good. So the first thing I do is to lighten it is I go up here to Image, or no, excuse me, I go to Layer and I go to Duplicate Layer and I click OK. Keep in mind there's always probably, you know, 57 different ways to do something in Photoshop. These are just the ways that I was taught years ago. They work for me. And since they work for me, I'm not really looking to find new ways to do things. I'm a little lazy like that. So this is just how I learned, and it's what works for me, and it's super simple. So once I made a duplicate layer, I'm going to go over to my layer palette. Right here where it says normal, I'm going to click on this arrow and bring up my options, and I'm going to go to screen. This is something I do on my regular photos as well, just to lighten things up. So I always go to screen, and you can see here it got really lighter. This is where you can go to opacity. It's at 100% right now, so you can adjust this and kind of play with it until it's the look you want. So if I go down on the lower end by 8%, it's a little darker like it originally was. You just want to slide this around till it's looking the way you want it to look. So I'm just going to I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. So you can just play with this layer, or slider, excuse me, until you get it to where you want it to be. And then once you get it looking how you want it, you're just going to go up to layer, and you're going to flatten your image. The next thing I want to do, whoops, is go to layer again and go to duplicate layer. And then I'm going to do, from this little menu here, I'm going to choose soft light. This is really just going to make the colors more vibrant and to really kind of pop more. You can see here they're quite bright. This is where I want to go to opacity again, and I just want to adjust this down a little bit. I don't want to make you think these, products and papers and stickers are super dark and rich. I mean, I want you to see them how they really are. So I'm going to move this around, the slider here, until I'm seeing what I see on my actual layout. So this looks about right. So once you get that set, you're just going to go to layer and flatten your image again. And then the third step I do is to sharpen my photo, my image. I'm going to go to duplicate layer again, click OK. Now there's a couple different ways to sharpen photos, and this is just the way I was taught. Go down here to other, and I go to high pass. So I'm making a high pass layer, and you can see here where everything got gray, but you can see the outline of things on my image. My radius is set to 1.0, and this is just something that I always have it at that, so that's where I leave it. It's always at 1.0 and I don't change it. So you're just going to click OK, and then I go over here and I'm going to do a hard light layer. So this just sharpens up the photo. I usually you can adjust your opacity again to make it less or more. I almost always adjust it down to anywhere between 50 to 60%. It may look fine, and then if you really zoom in, it might look a little too sharp. So I always change this. Anywhere between 50 and 60 is fine with me. I don't even stress over it. I just move that slider anywhere in there and I'll accept it. So once you get that, you're just going to go to layer and flatten your image once again. So that's all I do to my images. I do a screen layer to lighten it. I do a soft layer to make the colors stand out more, and I do the high pass filter to sharpen it. So once I do that, I'm just going to crop the image, and this is where I just go and crop right around the edges here. I do leave a little bit of a border around my layout or my projects. This is just personal preference. It's the way that I like to have it. I don't like to crop exactly to the edge. Just because normally I'm not going to have my picture so perfect or my shot of this so perfect that I can crop all the way edge and have it perfect. So it's just easier for me to leave a little bit of that border, and I actually like it because it has a little bit of a darker look behind my project, which I think makes my colors and my project stand out, and that way it's not blending into the background of something. So that's just a personal preference. That's up to you. Also, when you're cropping down, if your project happens to be a little bit crooked, if you didn't take your photo straight on, if you hold your cursor right up on the corner, any of the corners here, you can kind of rotate your box a little bit so that if your layout was crooked, you could kind of straighten it out that way sometimes. So you can play with that too if your image wasn't straight on. So once you have it cropped down the way you like, you're just going to hit the check mark to accept it. And there's my cropped image. So from here, I would just resize my image. I do it several different ways. I would probably save this as my original, and then I would resize it for a couple different things. If I'm resizing things for my blog, I go up to image and go to image size. And a lot of times for my blog, I would just crop this to around a 12 by 12. I usually make the longest end of my image 12 inches. So if it was like a horizontal photo, I would go 12 by 8. A vertical, I would go 8 by 12. A square image, I would go 12 by 12, always at 72 on the resolution, 72 DPI. So that's what I would normally do if I'm going to submit this to a publication. I would resize it down a little smaller because they usually do have limits on how big the files can be. So once you get that size, you click OK, and then that's going to be a good size that you can put it on your blog or online galleries and things like that. And then to save my images, you know, everyone's got their own personal way. I usually use my name. And then I add I just drew a total blank. And then I add the title of my layout. So I just use my name and the title. And then if I have detail shots, I would just add detail at the end, detail 1, detail 2, detail 3, etc. So that's how I save my images. So that's pretty much all I do. It's really simple. Those few steps, those are the steps I use all the time, and once you get the hang of it, I probably spend, you know, maybe a minute editing each photo that I take. So hopefully this is, you can find it a little bit useful or get a few tips out of it. You know, if you have any other questions, just let me know. I'm also going to add some links back to my original tutorial about how I take my photos and some extra tidbits ones in the blog post. So thanks for listening.